natural language processing group. She loves building software, especially search engines, and is passionate about open source development. Yeah, this is half the panel right here. Next, we have Ellen Voorhees. She likely needs no introduction. She is a fellow at the U.S. National Institute of Standards and Technology, which we in the room probably know as NIST. Most of her tenure, she has managed the TREC project, a project that develops the infrastructure required for large-scale evaluation of search engines. I'm sure we have all used lots of her data sets. She has received her bachelor's in computer science from Penn State and her master's and PhD degrees in computer science from Cornell. Before joining NIST, she was a senior member of technical staff at Siemens Corporate Research in Princeton, New Jersey, where her work on intelligent agents applied to information access resulted in 3 patents. She is a fellow of the ACM and an inaugural member of ACM's SIG-IR Academy. Woo! All right, so we are going to talk about everyone's career journeys and the diversity of women who make up the search field. And we are going to start with Jess. So Jess, tell us what you are working on.
Hi, I'm Jess. What am I working on? I'm a data scientist at Zocdoc, a marketplace that matches patients looking for healthcare appointments. I am now the data scientist at Zocdoc, which means I always wore a lot of hats, and now that's even more true. So the kind of the core of the thing is I'm always looking to research some ways to improve the re-ranking algorithm. My team's really thinking about how we represent facets right now, so I'm doing my part of that to see how the re-ranking algo is representing facets that patients care about. And the rest of my team is also, especially product and design, I interface cross-functionally in my team and with other teams. So we're thinking about reworking a major piece of the patient search journey, which means I need to be in the room to kind of steer my design and product colleagues towards the art of the possible. I don't know, the big growth piece for me this year is I don't want to be the only data scientist forever. So I've spent Q1 kind of learning to stand in the place of hiring manager and what does it mean to hire for my team as opposed to just interviewing for, you know, a tech round. How do I weigh trade-offs of the different candidates that come through the door? So that's my big growth for Q1.
And I think you just got your first
and
lady.
I have this is on the Zooms, Audrey, but someone has signed the paperwork. So in theory, I am hopeful that I will soon not be the lonely only mouse. We'll see what happens when I get back to the office. Wish me luck.
I'm sorry. All right, who wants to take the mantle? Julie, go.
Hello. So I work on Elasticsearch on core search features. So that includes things like new relevance features, search performance, as well as data compatibility. And my current focus is on vector search or k-nearest neighbor search. So that's a new foundational capability for Elasticsearch. And much of the core algorithm is being developed within Lucene. So my work kind of spans Lucene and Elasticsearch, kind of focused on this vector search problem.
Amazing. Ellen, you want to take it?
Okay, I'm currently working on building test collections, which you'll find out in the talk following this. But in addition to that, NIST has had a focus recently on AI, as has the world, of course, and we're trying to expand the type of benchmark evaluation that TREC has done for information retrieval to AI more broadly. And so I'm trying to think about what that actually means and what type of data sets would one need for trustworthy AI. And the problem there is trustworthiness is just thoroughly, completely, and utterly context dependent. And I don't know yet what are good abstractions to get for trustworthy AI.
Should I jump in? Cool. Yeah, I'm Chen. So I'm a data science manager at Shopify. I lead a team of 7 data scientists working on search and discovery. So we have a couple of different work streams. One, main one that you've probably heard about throughout this conference is improving search for millions of merchants, which is really fun and challenging at the same time. Our data scientists are very embedded with the product team. We work really closely with engineering, and we're very full stack. We go from tracking ETL, success metrics, all the way to using data, leveraging data to improve search, and then experimentation, both offline and online. So that's been a lot of fun. The other work streams that we've got going on are product recommendations. So again, improving the product discovery for buyers, so for our merchants' customers. And then we're also exploring ways of making merchants more comfortable with having more control, being able to customize perhaps some of the search and recommendations, and just giving them making it less of a black box and making it a bit more explainable and trustworthy. Maybe just like a small thing, other side things that I'm interested in and work on is I'm part of the ML ethics committee at Shopify, and so we work with other teams to just help them identify ways in which the data products that they build, just questions they should be asking, things they should be thinking about in terms of the ethical implications of the stuff that they're building. So that's one area that I'm passionate about and spend a little bit of time on. And then another area that I'm passionate about is data literacy, so improving data literacy across less technical folks. And so we created this program originally for product managers, but then we expanded it just to anyone who's interested. And so I helped kind of shape the curriculum of that and gave some presentations, and we made it remote friendly, so it's bite-sized, and people can just go. It's self-paced. People can go and learn about how to do data. How to data.
Thank you. I also realized I forgot to say we're going to have a 10-minute audience Q&A session at the end of this panel. So if you have questions, please save them until then, and please also have questions. And I'm actually going to play a bit of ping pong with Chen. She is going to kick off the next question, which revolves around leadership. So we all lead projects and people in different capacities. We would love to hear more about your leadership role and how you create an inclusive environment.
Thank you. So like I mentioned, we've got a team of data scientists, and I'm also part of the sort of product leadership for Discovery Experience, our team of 40-ish people, along with Caro, our PM over here, and our engineering director. Culture is something really important to us. I think a lot of people will say that, but it's something that I think we've done a really good job on, ensuring an inclusive culture, one where people feel comfortable speaking up, providing feedback, creating a space where it's safe to do so has been really important for us. And so, we do this in different ways. For example, we run health checks regularly, where it's an anonymized forum for folks to leave feedback on how things are going, what's challenging, what could be better, and then we all meet together and discuss. This is good because some people might not feel comfortable raising things, not anonymously or in a meeting. So this is one way in which we kind of encourage different people, different perspectives to speak up. One other thing, I think there was something else I wanted to say there. I'm not into hierarchical structures, and so I try to make it a point to have people on my team own their relationships with our product partners, so that not all decisions or communication has to go through me. So that's something that's really important. And then finally, just amplifying and celebrating the team's successes is something that I try to do, and we all try to do as leads.
Thank you. Anybody else feel passionate?
Yes. Great. So I guess I've been the technical lead for different projects, and a big part of that is kind of helping set the technical vision and then organizing everyone on the project towards our goal. So one thing that I've tried to do to kind of create an inclusive environment is also kind of similar to Hen, provide different ways of communicating and kind of try to support different communication styles. So some people may be more soft-spoken and they don't feel as engaged in a kind of like fast-paced technical meeting full of various interruptions. But if they're kind of given the opportunity to follow up over email or maybe comment on a design document, they're maybe going to raise really interesting feedback or even kind of provide important points of disagreement. So yeah, I've kind of found that providing these different pathways, especially in written form, can really help everyone be heard. And I think it helps like not only people who are maybe more soft-spoken, but also people who just prefer to kind of think about problems very deeply before providing opinions. And also people who maybe don't speak English as their first language, they can also sometimes just feel more comfortable having a written option as well. Great.
My leadership roles are either extremely structured or not. So like I'm the statistical chops in the building. So there's a little bit of reaching out to juniors to be like, you know, before you set up this test, please run it by me, or like they'll reach out, that kind of thing. But that's fairly informal. I do a little bit of education, but in mid-2020, I stepped into a role as an ERG lead for Zocdoc's Women in Tech ERG. And we made very specific choices at that time to, like a lot of those groups can be and are sometimes useful as just a book club or just a support group. But instead we made choices to be very aggressive in the structure that we gave. So, for example, having a panel workshop for members of that community before review sessions with specific tactics about how to promote yourself to your boss, to your boss's boss through review structures. If you didn't really understand how your career was going to play out over the next 12 months, the next 24 months, in terms of promotion cycles and review cycles, giving some examples and some advice from folks who had more time in the boat was incredibly impactful for folks who had just shown up and didn't quite know what their career path was going to look like. We also set up panels for not just the members of that community, but for the tech org as a whole, with very concrete tactics about how to support your colleagues who are pregnant, who are caregiving either for children or for elders, and what it can look like to be an ally in that space if you haven't been given those tools before. So really trying to find ways to change women's careers in the tech org in as direct a way as possible. And that's been fairly popular, well-received, and successful.
Amazing. No pressure for everyone doesn't. Go. Okay. I was just going to follow up on something Chen said, not to pick on you more. And I was wondering if everybody wanted to weigh in on this as well. When you, as leaders, solicit anonymized feedback, do you ever get really salty feedback that perhaps sows tension or is hard to answer in I just, considering where I work, I know the trolls are plenty when anonymous identities are in play. Have you ever dealt with that?
I don't have a spicy answer. I don't think that for us on the team we had to deal with that much. I could see it happening when it's like a broader forum, but I think we're still small enough that, you know, it's anonymous, but we're all still civil and friendly with one another. We all feel like we're contributing to one mission, so I don't think anyone would like try to troll or be too like aggressive. I think typically people are pretty good at like if they do have something like difficult to bring up, I think they're more likely to bring that up one-on-one, like something that would require a discussion. They might bring it up to one of the leads and like chat through it so that it's constructive and not just like sows tension, basically, from my experience.
So this is kind of tied to my organizational structure, but you know, I work on a team that has a biweekly sprint cycle. We do team retro at the end. It is an anonymous like card exercise, and so I think stuff is less likely to fester and come up when there are regular check-ins, when there are health checks that where you can regularly vent, like, this is still a problem, no, this is still a problem, and it's not like held to the end of the year, you've been holding on to it for a long time. If there are lots of forums for that to get out there, then I think it's more likely for it to come up in one of those scenarios. And if your team is willing to then, like, maybe change a process, maybe write down some some cultural norms that were implicit that should have been made explicit for new joiners, where, like, expectations were not being met. Someone came in, didn't understand that we were all playing by rules that we made before pandemic started, and now we're all here.
I think it likely does have to do with the granularity of the organization of where you're doing this. As I know, fairly recently, when NIST went for completely virtual, and they had town halls, some of the comments that came in anonymously through the, I don't know what platform, I think it was Blue Jeans that NIST was using at the time, but through the Blue Jeans chat, were not well received and shouldn't have been well received. To NIST's management's credit, they were quickly, that problem, the problem of the unfortunate comments was quickly addressed. And to my knowledge, so was the problem that underlied the anonymous comments. But I think it does matter a lot upon what granularity you're talking here. A small, cohesive group, or maybe not that cohesive, but a small group, is likely to be less anonymous, even when anonymous.
My manager definitely always knows when it's me.
Right, for instance. And so that plays into it as well.
Thank you. That popped into my head as you guys were all talking. So Ellen, I'm picking on you again, actually. So Ellen represents the research wing of Women of Search. And I know it's kind of the opposite for you, where a lot of us are likely the 1 or 2 to 3 women on a team full of non-women. I know that you had previously told me in the research sphere, a lot of people, especially in the information retrieval research sphere, are women. And I was wondering if you could talk about that and the environment that you came up in and how it allowed you to thrive and build the career you have.
Okay. Let me correct one thing there. I wouldn't say, women are not the majority. Right? So it's still, they're still a minority, but it's a much bigger percentage than I perceive in businesses. I think a part of that, it was historical happenstance. Information retrieval had, as a research field, had a couple of early on pioneers who happened to be women. Karen Spark-Jones is one of them that comes to mind, and if any of you knew Karen, she was memorable, right? So I actually have always had female role models in what I have been, in the spheres in which I've been working. I have tried to do that myself then moving forward. So I personally would have claimed that there wasn't really an issue in information retrieval, women issue. I appear to be, however, in the minority of that opinion, because I do know at various SIG-IR conferences, so SIG-IR is the ACM conference on information retrieval, which is sort of the main research venue for information retrieval. And the ACM SIG itself, so this special interest group on information retrieval, has started a Women in IR group. And I don't know if this is my age or my personality type or what. I've sort of been the lone woman's, no, I shouldn't say lone, I know of at least one other, saying, why do we need this? But it does exist. People have been getting support from it. Yeah, that's.
Cool. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. Wanna add?
Nope, yeah, nothing to add.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Anyone else?
The question is, women around you, how did that affect your coming up through?
Yeah,
what you
basically,
did?
I would say that everyone on this panel is thriving. And so I want to know more about the environment in which you came up that career ladder, whether it's with women or not women or dinosaurs, you know, anything.
Not dinosaurs. Yeah, so I am the product of a bachelor's degree at a women's college. So at the beginning of my training, there were lots of women. And at the end of my training as a graduate student in economics, there were very few women. I was often the only woman in a seminar. And I learned to react clearly and confidently to this is more of a comment than a question. And now I work on an incredibly diverse team, which has been fantastic. I am one of several women on my team. I am the only white woman on my team. Both of those things make me happy. There's a diversity of, backgrounds, trainings, perspectives, country of origin, and I think all of that, does the stuff we talk about in tech to make the product better. Especially when we're dealing with healthcare and the plight of patients trying to find it. Having a diversity of how bad that can look is often really helpful when spitballing new designs. But yeah, I have had very few female mentors along the way coming up, not even at a women's college. Like a lot of my professors were not female. A lot of my advisors were not female. I think I have had a lot of time in my career where I lacked mentorship or sponsorship, and am kind of refining how I can do that for others now as I go through where my career is now.
Cool. Thank you.
I forget the original question. Environment.
Environment, thriving, career
Cool.
ladder.
Awesome.
Keyword
You've all
search.
shared. Yeah, you've all shared interesting perspectives. So my background is in physics and math, where it was also quite male-dominated.
You don't say.
So I'm kind of used to that, I guess I would say. But something that I really valued when sort of switching over to data science and industry was the diversity of folks coming into data science, not necessarily gender diversity, but just where people came from, because it wasn't a thing that you could study in university back in the day, unlike now. And so something that I really enjoyed when coming over to Shopify was just the various, educational backgrounds, perspectives, things like that, that people in data had, and even outside of data as well. I find we're quite diverse. Our team is quite diverse. We have a lot of women in leadership on the Discovery Experience team, I would say, which is awesome. Yeah. We could probably use a bit more gender diversity on the team. Would always be good, would be better. But it is cool how many women we have in the sort of senior leadership side.
Cool.
Yeah.
As an ex-Shopifyer, I can vouch for this, that it's great. And that actually brings us, so I'm switching around the order of a question a little bit, because that just hit on something interesting. And what brought me to the search field was also the diversity of backgrounds of people who are able to enter the field. And so a question I wanted to put to you all is that since search is such an interdisciplinary field, how do you find your place in it? And how do you maintain that place? Sorry, I can also pass this one.
I can start with that one again because I'm coming here from a perspective of pretty much completely just research. And so as a research career, search is no different from a research career and other things in that you find your place by publishing, right? You publish, or else you don't.
Publish or perish.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I have had the other advantage in my career of leading Trek, and Trek has been fairly prominent in the information retrieval research field.
Just a little bit.
So and so that has also, being associated with that has also garnered some reputation, I guess, is what I'm thinking here. Information retrieval is another way in which, I should have said this earlier, but that the women balance in information retrieval research earlier, at least, happened also because of the diversity of different backgrounds. And I know that you were a librarian, right? I mean,
Hell yeah.
library science was a very large contribution to early information retrieval history. And
You're
that
welcome,
tended
world.
and that tended to be more female dominated also than your hardcore computer science places. And so that diversity of paths provide an interesting set of viewpoints and a variety of ways from which you can draw of what's important and how to study it.
Amazing. Thank you. Whatever feels natural. Anybody?
From this very clear path towards how Ellen came into search. I came in very recently through a side door, through no fault of my own. I have this background in academic economics. I am on the search team only by virtue of having been on a data science kind of insights team embedded within a tech company when headcount opened up in search and closed in the data science team in the middle of a pandemic. So I went and learned how to build a search algorithm. And a year later, kind of am now head up saying, oh, where are my people? Where is my community? And hopefully you all have been working at this for 10 years, making a community for me to stumble in the side door of and learn from all of the videos and books and resources that you've created. So kudos, well done. But yes, this is a very interdisciplinary environment, and I have the ML, I have a little bit of the NLP, I have very little of the database and computer science background. I have none of the IR background. That's something I'm acquiring through this community. So I think you'll find that as this group grows bigger, we'll find people who are stumbling in and have pieces and are on the edges rather than the like very traditional central route.
And we will soon take over the world as we get bigger and bigger.
That was great.
Cool, thank you. So I wanted to bring it back to mentorship and role models. And I wanted to ask Julie, so I know you've had a varied experience with mentorship and role models, et cetera, and I would love for you to share with us all your take on it and how it's helped you in your career or hindered you or any of that.
Sure. Yeah, so I guess earlier in my career, I thought of myself as not really having many mentors or role models. And I think part of the issue is that I thought that a mentor had to be just like me in most ways. So this would be like a female engineer who was quite senior, someone who had a very similar working style to me. And this, I guess, was obviously quite difficult because there's very few people who even exist with this sort of kind of background. So I started to think about it more as kind of maybe having many mentors, each of whom I connected with on some important, I guess, topic or connection. And otherwise, they could maybe be very different from me. So this has been kind of like a really helpful mindset change for me, and it's also kind of how I try to approach my mentorship as well when I mentor others. And as just one example, I now work with a really great engineering leader, and he has a kind of very collaborative style that's similar to my own, and I've learned a lot from seeing how he approaches his leadership role with this style.
Cool, thank you. Anyone else?
So I've not been part of an official mentorship role as either mentee or mentor, but I've been involved in lots of informal ones, but on both sides. I think I view the role of a mentor, or I see the role of a mentor much like a good thesis advisor, or where it's the thesis advisor who introduces the person to the community, who teaches the person sort of what's important in the field and what's not important in the field. In addition, frequently of getting the financial support to continue the research for that particular project. And I think in any organization, including government, having somebody who knows how to actually get things done, or where you go to get those things done, or how it is you go about knowing who it is to get the things done, that's all really important information. It tends to come only through osmosis unless people make a concerted effort to pass it on.
Yeah.
And sometimes that concerted effort to pass it on should be a concerted effort to stop it and change it. But nonetheless, how you get things done is a really important part of fitting into an organization and accomplishing what you need to accomplish. And so that sort of practicality is important to pass on.
Yeah, I don't think I've had any official mentors either, although I have been a mentor for folks, especially like new folks who joined the company in the last year, things like that. But I've definitely had many unofficial mentors. I really enjoy making strong connections with my sort of like eng peers and product peers and other leads, maybe other data science leads, and that's been really helpful. Something that I've found it more challenging in a remote world because, back when we were in an office, you would just bump into someone and you'd be able to like rant and then hear their advice, or just like grab a coffee with someone and get their perspective on things. So I think you do have to be a bit more intentional about it now, I find, at least in like a remote setting where you don't have those chance encounters. Yeah. But I think that's also made me more comfortable like opening up and having those stronger relationships with people that I speak to day to day.
Cool. Radical vulnerability. Cool. So our last big beefy question really involves what green flags and red flags, I guess you could say. So I know lots of people are hiring and looking for jobs in the world, and us as search engineers or search research scientists or PMs, what have you, we, as Julie said, are a rare bunch that have our skills. So I was wondering if you could tell us a bit about what you look for when you're evaluating whether a company's environment might be conducive to your growth as this person with a kind of strange background, and maybe what you definitely avoid if you hear it during an interview process or anything like that.
Not everyone at once.
Not that anyone is
Let me
looking
take a crack
to
at
leave.
this. Here we go. So I think my recruiting partners would want me to differentiate between the top of funnel questions and the bottom of funnel questions. So there are questions about what kind of places I want to apply to. And I think there are, as a data scientist, right, I'm looking for places that tell me about the exciting projects that I'm going to work on, about how cool the team is, about how collaborative and cross-functional that team is. I think red flags are going to be things like verbatim describing the work of a data scientist derogatorily. Like, you're not going to go in a hole for 3 weeks and build a model and then come out with it, are you? And then, so there are things at the top of funnel that tell you what the company is trying to be, what the larger organization is trying to be, and making sure that your preferences, I think this is less like red flag, green flag, but like, what am I looking for in a company? I want to find some place that's going to take me to my next goal, give me fun projects to work on that are going to make me better and stronger in the places that I need to grow. But then at the bottom of the funnel, you have the stare down with the hiring manager, where you get to ask questions like, how many vacation days did you take last quarter?
Yeah.
And how do you intermediate between a disagreement between product and eng? Have you had an experience recently where an executive stakeholder decided to stop a roadmap and do something else for reasons that were not clear? How did you communicate that to your team? I want to put them in some worst case scenarios and see if they tell me some variation of nothing bad ever happens here. Everything is great.
Red flag.
Red flag.
Goodbye.
So things about, what the bottom of funnel questions that are red flags are going to be about, like, how will you work with me when bad things happen? Because bad things happen.
Yeah.
I'll just add that it takes a certain personality type to be a federal employee.
We are thankful for your service.
There are lots and lots of things that are just completely out of your control and out of your, management chain control, very high up. I mean, it has some perks. I'm not saying that's not true, but it also has some really weirdness to being a federal employee. The federal budget process is the main prime example there. So if you're looking for a job, it is a good idea to know both what you want to do, but also what you cannot abide, and make sure that the cannot abides are not prevalent in where you're going.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can add a bit from like a data science perspective. There are organizations where data science is thought of as more of like a service line, and someone you bring in at the end to answer a couple of questions or measure how well this thing that you already decided to do is doing. That's what I want to avoid.
Yeah.
And so I've definitely worked hard on the teams that I've been part of at Shopify to make sure that data has a seat at the table. Just not forcefully, but just show people the value of bringing in data earlier and then just truly embedding in the product team. And then you're able, they see your value and then you're brought in for, you're at the start, you're part of the team. You're truly part of the product team, even though you might report up to a different, structure. So that's really important to me. I think I would struggle with not having control and not influencing decisions. And so I recognize that. So that's, I would look for places where data is really like just truly part of the product team and contributes to strategy and decisions.
Amazing. Thank you. That is our last scripted by me question. Can we have a round of applause, please, for our panelists? Yay. So before we open it up to Q&A, we're a little bit early for Q&A. I just wanted to thank you all for coming. This was a really nice experience for us all, I think. And the Women of Search Slack channel is alive in the relevant search workspace, so go join if you like. And if you're an ally, go join too. I think the future for us is a bit more formalization. We're looking at creating a LinkedIn group and hopefully having a presence at Haystack in Europe, and more things to come. So keep an eye on our channel. And I hope everyone has questions. Anybody? Question time? Yeah? Woo!
I have 4 daughters.
Oh, yeah, yell.
I have 4 daughters and a son.
Okay,
3
cool.
are newly entered in the workforce. 1 is about to turn a senior in college. What was it like for you to first enter the workforce, and what is it like for women now to first enter the workforce?
Okay, I will repeat the question with a caveat that I am under a strict no talk about myself rule from my current company. We are in a quiet period, but I will give it to the guests. Essentially, what were you looking for coming out of college into the data science world, and how did you experience that as a newbie entering the field?
Okay, so I'm the dinosaur on this panel, right? So
No,
when I am obviously. So when I first entered the workforce, the world was just thoroughly different, right? It was pre-search engines, as you all know them, and I was looking for a research position in which I was not teaching, which was also sort of weird. So I think that I don't have any, I guess the upshot here right now is that I don't have any good answers for the, what was it like for you? Because I also have a son who is now entering the workforce. I really do think it comes back down to knowing what it is you want to do. I mean, and that's harder at that age because you don't actually really know what you want to do, because you don't really know.
You think you do, though.
You don't really know what the options are either. And so depending upon personality type, right, be open to trying different things, even if they don't seem like that was what you expected to do. That could be a place where you really find a far more interesting path.
Amazing. I'm going to keep this microphone up with you all, and I'm going to pass this one to Renee.
Do we want to do other answers, Audrey?
Oh, Jesus. Okay. Yep, we do. Okay. Oh, but you can still take this then.
Oh, sure. Okay, that's fine.
How did you find it?
Oh, so I was just kind of, I guess, based on the last question, I was going to talk a little bit from the perspective of the open source world. I guess my experience has been like, even maybe 20 years ago, being in the open source world was perhaps a bit more terrifying than it is now. I guess my kind of main familiarity was with the Linux community, where people could sometimes be like attacked personally, or there was like, kind of a more difficult style. And I'm very happy to have seen it grown. So there are kind of many more communities now, some with very kind of positive and collaborative styles. So I think even if there are still some issues, it's often possible to kind of find a group of people, some sort of a tech community where you kind of really fit in and can hopefully do your best work.
I'll just say that I think a practice that I put in place when I was a college student moving into industry, but also moving from doctoral program into data science land, was do informational interviews. Find people that your parents know, that your friends know, and do not ask them for a job. Ask them for 20 minutes of their time to explain what they do and how they got there. The moment that you say, I'm not looking for a job, the shoulders relax, and suddenly you have time to understand what that person's experience was. That put me in an incredible spot for understanding what I wanted to do with the next couple of years of my life after my undergrad. And I'm sure I don't need to tell this room that the string data scientist certainly didn't mean anything really when I went on the market, and it means even less now. So trying to figure out what version of data science job you are looking for is difficult. It's a numbers game, and the only way you'll figure it out, either at an graduate level or a graduate level, is by hitting your brain against that interview process and that experience process many, many times. So minimum like 20 informational interviews the year you graduate, or you're not even trying.
Or just go home.
Yeah, +1. I did those, and I went to a bunch of meetups until I met someone who was like, "Hey, your physics research sounds like kind of relevant. You want to come chat?" And that's how I got my job. So, meetups, info interviews. Yeah.
All right, Renee.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, if you look back at your career so far, what would you think has helped you the most to take a step forward, and what would be the greatest obstacles you faced? If you can bring this up so quickly, I don't know.
So the question was, looking back over the course of your career, What was the single most important thing that you did that advanced your career, and what was the single most biggest obstacle? That's correct? Yes. Okay, so I have the single biggest obstacle. And that is actually, for me personally, being an introvert is far more of an obstacle than being a woman. I have to push myself to do things like social dinners last night, right? I have to push myself to mingle during breaks and things, and yet it's important to do. And I think part of the reason maybe why being a less social person is a bigger impediment than being a woman is because it's even more of a minority, right? The world really is aimed at people who like to be social. Having said all that, actually, I did learn in the past 2 years that even I have limits on how much social isolation is good for me, right? Even I got tired of being socially isolated. The biggest thing that, biggest benefit or help for me was one I probably can't even take credit for, but it was falling into the job at NIST for me, the visibility of Trek. That was a really good fit. It was for me. There was lots of stuff that was detail oriented that I could do, and yet there was enough visibility there that it was helpful. And so that has been that for I don't know how much that's going to generalize to anybody else, but for me that's my answer.
Yeah, I know. It's a good one, Renee. Keeping us on our toes. I think something that was really helpful for me was so Shopify was my first data science job. I've been there for 6 years, and I've grown a lot while there. Pretty early on into my tenure at Shopify, I got to have an intern. And so that was my first kind of time officially. I think he actually was reporting to me officially. So officially taking on a report, figuring out what management was like, and then, from there, I realized it was awesome and really fun, and at least for me, right? It's not for everyone, but yeah. So I think that really helped me. And, even before officially becoming a lead, I ended up having a couple of people reporting to me and being on my team, and I was kind of in between tech lead and people lead, and I think that really helped me.
I'm still trying to find a good answer to this question, but the biggest impediment I've overcome is definitely the PhD. It's not for the faint of heart, and I'm not sure I would recommend it to most people. In fact, I tend to take young undergrads who say they want to go to grad school aside and try to convince them otherwise. But I think in my recent career, at least, the thing that's pushed me forward the most is in a variation on Ellen's answer, it's the personal connections. It's the starting to set up one-on-ones with people in different teams and different cross-functional roles. Doing networking and checking up regularly with colleagues who've moved on to other companies and seeing what they're up to and what they've learned in the different choices, there, but for the grace of God, maybe I would have ended up in that position. What did they learn that they can give to me? So just kind of keeping up the network as best I can, I think is moving me step by step towards the places that I'd rather be.
So for me, I guess one of the things that has really pushed me forward, but also one of the big challenges has been becoming an open source maintainer. And the main thing there is, I guess for me, kind of learning how to work totally in public. So if you kind of forget your coffee in the morning, you say something totally incorrect on a GitHub issue, maybe you kind of shipped a bug or made a poor design decision, that sort of thing is very public. It can kind of feel permanent on the internet sometimes. So I feel that that sort of work has really kind of pushed me to do better work, and that I receive feedback from such a kind of broad variety of people and hear about my work being used in different use cases. But it's also definitely been something to kind of learn how to do more comfortably, kind of reminding myself to focus on progress as opposed to perfection, and kind of not sweating the small stuff as much.
I am microphoneless, so
Oh.
whoever has questions.
He's got the mic.
So many.
Who's inspiring you the most today, and why?
Who's inspiring you?
Who is inspiring you the most today and why? I get to play Audrey.
Barack Obama.
Jess?
I mean, that's what I'm here for. I am listening to all of you. I'm new to the search space, so like this is where I learn where the edges are, what the new stuff is, what I should have learned a year ago and have not yet. But yeah.
Sounds like that's.
Oh, okay. Lady Gaga.
I don't have.
I mean, take the mic.
I'm not allowed to talk.
About who
Lady
inspires
Gaga?
you?
We now have to answer.
Mark, what happened to our chat at lunch about asking easy questions?
Oh boy.
We'll think on it. Get back to you.
Okay, we have a question from our online audience, if I can perhaps ask that, maybe a bit easier, I hope.
Oh, I forgot.
So Jenna Belisai, past Haystack speaker. Hi, Jenna. What advice do you have for fostering a culture of experimentation at an organization beyond just the search or data science team?
That's a good one. I feel like that's a good
I could talk a bit about that. So it's something that one can try to do ground up, right? Data scientists can try to do this and explain to the product team why it's important and why, it might feel slower to run this experiment, but ultimately it'll help us move faster. I think that's a great first step. It also helps getting sort of senior leadership on board with this, and that's something that I think we were lucky enough to have happen at Shopify a couple years ago when a data director joined and kind of promoted the idea of experimentation as a way of making better product decisions. So I think, that one is a little harder to control, but as a data scientist, this is actually a big part of why I got involved with data literacy. I started running these workshops, these ad hoc workshops on experimentation and how to run good A/B tests and how to design them. And I ran these for product teams outside of the team that I was working with because I was just really passionate about sharing this knowledge. And so I think the more people can do this, the better. You have to get good at explaining technical things to maybe less technical audiences, but that's a skill in itself as well. Yeah, so just keep doing it, try to explain the value, and don't just focus on the current run this experiment, it's going to take this amount of time, but what's the long-term goal and how is this going to help you move faster ultimately.
I'll answer this in 3 parts and say it really helps if your larger organization lives or dies by the microdata, right? There was a time in my company's history when we were subscription-based, and so there wasn't an appetite for either analytics or experimentation in the same way. But now that the clicks matter, wow, do we measure? Wow, do we experiment? And that's a real easy top-down way to enforce that kind of behavior. I'm lucky that I have a product organization that uses the word data-driven decisions on a regular basis, so it's coming from the top of that organization. I don't have to have fights with PMs that go, no, really, you should, and that's easy on me. But then it's a finessing the how of it. Like, how do we experiment? How do we communicate the results of our experimentation? How do we make failures okay? How do we, refine that process? And as the data scientist in the room, I like to ask, how big is that, right? Like you're going to come back with a number, you're going to come back with an effect size, and you're going to raise your hand and say, how big is that? Is that big? Is that small? I don't know, compared to what? And like, it can be as easy as putting in your meeting notes for every single one of those readouts, you're going to ask those two questions, because just like in an academic seminar where, Professor Bob asks the same annoying question every time, they're going to come to expect it of me, and they're going to prepare it. And you're going to find friends to ask the same questions in those meetings. And over time, culture will change around that.
We have 1 minute left. Yeah, go. I mean, I have nothing.
Great panel, thank you. A few years ago, I heard about a Harvard study about junior faculty and senior faculty. Junior faculty, women were being promoted at a lower rate than men. And they did a fairly extensive data-driven study which found that the most effective intervention was requiring senior faculty to be mentors to junior faculty and have lunch with them on some regular basis, every month or whatever. People said, "Oh, this can't possibly work. Professor so-and-so, he's such a jerk. He's a terrible mentor." And this is for all graduate students, all junior faculty, not just women. They found that this was a hugely valuable thing, which addresses also the issue about introversion and so on. It sort of forces you to listen to other people. How many of you have participated in formal programs like that, and have they helped you?
I've only been a mentor, like officially I've only been a mentor, not so much a mentee, but I'll pass it over to Ellen.
I was just going to say, no, I have not been a part of any formal thing like that. I can easily imagine, though, so I should also say there that NIST does now have a formal mentoring program. I just was not part of it when I joined NIST because it didn't exist. I can easily believe that having interpersonal connections in which both parties are vested will change an environment. I mean, so I can easily understand that effect. It's just I haven't personally experienced it.
So I've been part of a couple of things along this line. First, I implemented a matching structure within the Women in Tech ERG, and I got to tell you, it's rough. Depending on the size of your organization, we ran up against a problem where while we've all benefited from informal mentorship of the seniors within our group, actually performing a match between juniors and seniors, specifying that they could not be in their direct reporting chain, meant that we didn't have anyone to match with anyone else. Or we were matching like UX designers with principal software engineers, where there are things to learn there, but it's not how do I make it to where you are. So that's rough, and trying to figure out how to square that circle is something I've been grappling with for a couple of years now. That said, I have never benefited from that kind of matching. My own self would love to. I see a different thing implemented on my own team, my search team, where new joiners are matched with a sort of recently joined person, so someone who's been there, at least 6 to 12 months, who remembers where all the potholes are when they joined, who is not in their direct reporting chain and isn't like managing their projects, so that they have someone to talk to about other stuff. When we have interns that come in, we match them, if they are female, with a Women in Tech a buddy, so that they have someone outside of their team to ask questions of and learn things of. But I think those are both very different examples than the there's your North Star. You want to be a tenured professor. How do I get there? Process. That's very difficult to engineer in the organization that I'm in.
Very abstract. I can say things. Might get sued. I would say that I've been a part of quite a few formal mentoring things in my career, and because I'm a boot camp grad, so I have a big chip on my shoulder because of that. And I would say mostly it hasn't worked, mostly because the seniors are not given direction to have a formal structure to the mentorship program. So I've had a lot of experiences where senior people will get into a room with me and they'll say, hi, like, okay, it's your time. What do you want to learn? I'm at your disposal, which is like amazing, sure. But I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what I don't know. And so that really, it might seem the way to go from the seniors' perspective, but from the juniors' perspective, it's the most horrifying thing ever, and I have not learned much from it. So it's much better when they come in with like a project and they're like, I want you to build this part of this thing. Goodbye, go do it. With my help, of course. Okay, that is it. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, Audrey.